Well, thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Hope everybody is well today. And yeah, the summer forecast, of course, has been released on markvoganweather.com. You can check that out with a link in the description below. And of course, please share with your friends and family, and hit that subscribe button. Plenty of content for you to look at, and let me know what you think in the comments section below with regards to the summer forecast. And yeah, it should be an interesting one. A quick look at Twitter before we get into it. From drought to deluge in southern Spain. This was the scene in Andalusia County, or province, should I say. I think through the course of yesterday afternoon. So, of course, the significant drought that has been ongoing in Spain. What a turnaround this is here. Obviously, one deluge is not going to wipe out the drought, of course, but it is interesting to see how nature can turn things around. And of course, there is so much focus on climate change and whatnot, and how we're seeing this increase in drought and whatnot. Of course, nature always has a way of being able to turn it around, and of course, it can often come at a price, unfortunately. So this was, of course, the scene in Andalusia County. Of course, we've had the tremendous flooding across parts of Italy in recent days. I believe we're in the midst of the wettest May in some 70 years for Italy. So very significant stuff, of course, indeed. And also, if you haven't already done so, check out the Global Weather and Climate Report recorded back on Sunday, talking a bit more. This was the scene in parts of Italy where we've got this landslide, trees, roads collapsing with of course, the saturated ground. There is very, very little to be able to hold all this vegetation from coming down the slopes, of course. When you've got so much wet ground, there's just nothing for the roots to be able to hold on to. So pretty remarkable stuff, of course. Also, what was interesting, a couple of days ago, I seen this tweet here of the wildfires, major wildfires taking place in parts of Alberta, as well as, I think, British Columbia. Record-breaking May heatwave, of course, here, triggering forest fires and whatnot. And smoke, this is actually an animation of the smoke coming out of Canada and getting entrained within the upper air pattern, getting swept out over the North Atlantic. And as you can see here, bouts of this smoky air was getting transported over the British Isles. And I do remember one or two comments saying that they wondered, that they felt anyway, that there was a kind of burny smell within the air. And it's very possible that this is the reason why they smelled that burny scent within the air. Was basically the smoke getting carried along by the jet stream over the Atlantic. So just something I thought that was quite interesting. I thought was worth showing you, of course. And yeah, the temperatures hit 23.4 at Bude Park in Cardiff yesterday. That was the UK's warmest temperature of the year so far, and it looks as if we are starting to see a bit of an uptick in temperature, as you would expect as we progress towards the month of June, and of course summer's opening month. We have got an interesting setup. We have got a complex setup as well, but there is indications that we could see unseasonably colder as per the GFS, and we'll look at that in just a second. It's getting pushed south towards the weekend and beyond. We also have the possibility of seeing some bona fide proper warm air getting transported out of the continent and into the British Isles as well. So we have the chance of seeing some unusually cooler versus, typical early summer warmth as well. So it's quite an interesting weather pattern. It is an unusual pattern at that as well. And if you look at the Arctic oscillation, we're actually going negative. Now, we are firmly positive at the moment, as you can see here off the GFS Ensemble. The NAO, the same, firmly positive, but expected to go negative. Now, of course, a negative NAO is not the same as what we get back in the winter months, of course. So, a negative NAO can actually be quite a warm pattern at this time of the year for the British Isles here. So we'll get to that in just a second. But temperatures yesterday across Europe, warmest of the year so far in parts of Germany. Remember, we had some very, very chilly conditions, really through much of the spring, but the month of May so far, and last week we've seen unusually cold daytime temperatures, unusually cold nighttime temperatures, but we've seen temperatures knocking the door of 30 Celsius in a large area of central Germany during the course of yesterday. So these were the high temperatures for yesterday. Poland as well, temperatures into the low to mid 20s. And across the board, Europe was pretty warm yesterday, as you can see here. Northern portions of the British Isles was distinctly chilly, of course, temperature only 13, 14 degrees in parts of Scotland. But notice here that we had a 23 all the way up into the Arctic region of Finland yesterday afternoon. So quite a turnaround, especially across central areas of Europe. Now, if we have a look at the rainfall over the next 10 days or so, there will be one standout about the distribution of rainfall, and that is the focus across southern portions of Europe. Now, where I did make mention both in the summer forecast, which I done a video yesterday from the Kincraig Castle Hotel, talking about the likelihood that we would have high pressure across more northern areas of the European continent, lower heights across more southern areas, and that, of course, would give way to increased convection, showers, thunderstorms, and unsettled conditions through the Mediterranean basin. And if we play through this, total accumulated precipitation of the GFS, you can see the focus of precipitation being across southern and eastern portions of Europe. So, of course, it doesn't take a meteorologist to work out that the area of high pressure is focused over the UK and Ireland. So we are ending the month on a rather different note to how we begun it. Of course, it was quite a wet first week to 10 days for the UK and indeed Ireland. The last week to 10 days of the month, very, very different indeed, quite the opposite actually. But look at the amount of rain. Now remember how much rain we've already seen in Italy. Look at the rains that we've seen in southern Spain over the last day or so, and we're seeing more heavier precipitation. This is only through Sunday, by the way, and you can see the focus really being across this zone here from Iberia, southern France, through the Alps, Italy, into the Balkan region, and Turkey, as well as if you head north up through eastern Ukraine and western Russia here. Continue to play through the loop here, and then you notice here, as we go from May into the month of June, you notice here the precipitation all of a sudden increases across the UK, which is quite interesting. That would indicate lower pressure becoming a little bit more dominant. But with that lower pressure is warmer air, and we'll look at that in just a second. But look at the amount of precipitation focused across southern portions of Europe. Very impressive amounts of rain, really, that is, and this could become actually a bit of a problem as we progress through the early portion of summer. Instead of it being drought and heat, we could be talking about floods, flash floods, devastating impacts in some of these areas that would typically be drying out. Now, you expect to have that subtropical ridge becoming strong, semi-permanent over the Mediterranean basin. As the sun becomes stronger, that subtropical ridge then migrates northwards, and we have got the situation where it looks as if the high in the means is focused and strongest across the north, but with that kind of lower height field across the mid basin, you've got that slightly cooler air in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Therefore, you've got all the dynamics in place to produce some very heavy flood events. So we need to be careful as we go forward and keep an eye on that. Now, looking at the 850 temperatures, this is a good representation of the type of air mass we will be dealing with. Of course, high pressure focused to the west over the Atlantic, but the eastward extension of that across the British Isles. We're seeing these flirts, these frontal systems moving over the top of that high and bringing the cloud cover, windier conditions across more northern areas as well, and also we're seeing spells of rain. As that high, becomes a little bit more established over the next wee while or so, what we're going to start to see is a little bit of an easterly component of those winds across more southern areas of the British Isles. But watch this space, right? This is the latest run of the GFS. Again, these models chop and change. So I'm just showing you this as an example, but it's interesting actually what it's showing. So we've got the relatively warmer across the Mediterranean basin, not so much across central areas of Europe. Remember that we had near 30 in Germany yesterday, and now we're starting to see the temperatures come right back down again, so cooler than average, back into the same areas that was warmest yesterday. Watch this space. One lobe of cold air comes through the Balkan region, as you can see here, but keep your eyes fixed on the UK. Now remember the NAO is going negative. There's that area of high pressure to the west of the UK and Ireland. Therefore, you have to keep an eye on that door to the north opening up. And this, folks, yes, an outlier, but look at that there. That's a fairly chilly air mass coming down around the eastern flank of that area of high pressure. Then that cool air gets sunk all the way down into the southwest of Europe, as you can see here, bringing plenty of chilly conditions. But look at this here, warmer as that air mass sinks south over the southwest of the continent. Warmer comes round the eastern side of that air mass and actually brings a lobe of much warmer air eventually into the UK. Now this is as we progress into the early portion of June. Looks as if the GFS is trying to see those temperatures really warming up. And these temperatures, by the way, would certainly be in the kind of mid-20 range at the very least, if not maybe even upper 20s, if that was to materialize. So that's quite interesting. Looking at the ECMWF, doesn't have exactly the same scenario. We've got that slightly less cooler underneath the area of high pressure. Colder tries to come down, but kind of stays more over the North Sea and then comes down over the central and eastern portion of the continent. Warmer across the southern portion of the continent, as you can see here. And then notice here, instead of it coming round that that cold plunge into the southwest, we've actually got the ECMWF having a very different outlook. It has that warm air coming up from the very area that the GFS has the cold air mass going into. So this is the complexity in the pattern. This is how it can be very difficult sometimes to determine what the outcome is going to be with this overall setup. And then as you can see here, we do have a cold plunge coming down into the central and over really the heart of Europe, I suppose. Warmer air trying to come up on the left side of that cold plunge. So yeah, a very interesting overall setup, that's for sure. If you look at each individual model run, let's look at the GFS Ensemble. Gives you a little bit of a better handle on what the overall trend in the runs are going to be. So this is the upcoming 5-day period. High pressure dominant to the west, extending over the UK and Ireland, as you can see here, and into the heart of Europe. So of course, with the lower heights down over the Mediterranean, the southern Mediterranean really, and Africa, that is the trigger to all that heavy rain across the southern areas of the continent here. So you can understand why we're seeing such wet conditions when you've got this high over negative scenario. Now, as we continue to play through the loop here, you notice that high in the mean stays to the west, hence why we could potentially see a cold surge of air coming south. Then we start to see the pressure building across the northern half of the continent, including the UK. That negative always stays to the southwest over Iberia, as you can see here. So I wouldn't be expecting any major heat around this region of the world really anytime soon based on the overall setup here. But certainly underneath that area of high pressure to the north, we could be talking about some decent warmth as we progress into the early portion of June. So certainly a lot of things to consider. Check it out, the summer forecast. I do encourage you to do that. A lot of work has been put into that, and we'll wait and see if it proves correct. So yeah, I appreciate you watching as always. Please please share with your friends and family, and like I say, do indeed hit that subscribe button. I do appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you again hopefully tomorrow with more. Bye.